I'm going to remove and grease the axles on this 2018 Honda Grom. Removing the axles is also required if you want to take the wheels off. Starting at the rear, you need a 14mm on the left and a 19mm on the right hand side. You may also need these 10 and 12mm wrenches for adjusting chain slack. Same for the front, you need a 14 for the right and a 19 for the left hand side. So 14 and 19mm wrenches are needed, maybe a 10 and 12, and the ratchet helps. I propped the bike up on these wooden blocks. They may not look like much, but they are pretty stable. Nothing moved during the whole operation. This is actually how I stored the Grom over winter. There are multiple ways you can do this, like maybe hang it from above. I love that picture. Right, I'm gonna loosen the 19mm nut for the front wheel. These wheels have been off a couple of times, nothing is stuck here, and that came off easily. And I used a wrench on the other side to keep the axle from turning on me. I unthreaded the nut, but I didn't remove the axle yet because I want to work on the rear wheel as well before I do that. Same thing for the rear. I propped the wrench on the 14mm side and I removed the 19mm nut. You get way better access to the wheel if you remove the rear mud guard. You need an Allen key for that and you need to take off 3 bolts. I then got to removing the rear axle. I chose to tap it with a rubber mallet, but it should slide out fairly easily. It's a good idea to prop up the wheel. If you can, it makes the process a bit smoother. I'll show you how I did that for the front. And there's the axle with some surface rust. Now I didn't take the wheel off because I didn't need to, but if you were to take it off, you'll need to pull the chain off the sprocket and slide it out of the way. A bit finicky at first, but it gets easier with practice. It's time to get dirty and start lubricating. You'll see me apply grease to the rusty axle, but I actually ended up replacing it because I had a spare. Oh yeah. This is the spare and the part number. The process of putting the axle back in can be a bit annoying. It helps if the wheel is propped up and you're basically aligning everything as you're pushing the axle through the swing arm, the spacer and the seal, the inside of the wheel, and on the other side again a spacer, a slot in the brake caliper, and again the swing arm. Go in small increments and remember that this shouldn't require a lot of force. These spacers right here can be especially annoying. You'll see the process in detail for the front wheel. And I again prevent the axle from turning while I tighten it up. One trick I've learned is to push the wheel forward with my knee. Since the chain adjuster nuts are already set, I know that my wheel needs to be as far to the front as possible. And this helps me align it. The proper torque in the Honda manual is 59 Newton meters. Since I own a torque wrench, I might as well use it. And I'm back to working on the front wheel now, taking the nut completely off. And you'll notice the axle slides out quite easily, partly because this wheel is properly propped up. The wooden board under it is keeping it in place. Part number for the front axle. I mentioned these pesky metal spacers that exist both in the rear and in the front. They are partly inserted into rubber seals, and this is what they look like. I gave it a good wipe just to make sure there was no debris on it. You can and you should do this process for the rear as well. Get the spacer out and pack some grease into the seal area. The grease stays there when you put the spacer back in. You should put in as much as possible. And the entire process is easier if the wheel is completely off. A little grease goes on the spacer itself, and then I slid it back in. There he goes. Some grease goes onto the dust seal on the disc brake side as well. And then I slide the spacer into the dust seal. The brake caliper is flexible enough for the wheel to be wiggled a little so that you can easily get it in. Generously, gently, and lovingly apply grease to the axle surface. And the axle goes back in. If you're curious, this axle actually goes through the center of the brake disc, the spacer, the dust seal, the wheel bearing, the wheel itself, and an inner distance collar, another bearing, another dust seal, another spacer, and finally the 19mm nut. You're supposed to torque the front to 54 Newton meters, which I'm doing with my torque wrench here. I don't get to use this tool very often, but when I do, I love that sound it makes. You may have noticed a little band-aid on my left index finger. As I was putting the rear mud guard on, I noticed the cut in my glove and memories came flooding back. I cut myself with a rusty sickle. Back to the Grom. Check out that smooth rolling wheel. Let's sit back and appreciate it for a little while. A bit of brake cleaner on the brake discs, wipe that off, and we're done. That's it. Stay till the end if you want to see some glamour shots of the Grom.